The inheritance. The day Judge Renshaw read the will, the room was thick with unspoken expectations, the kind you feel pressing down on your shoulders before anyone says a word. And when I stood up after he said my name, the air seemed to crack open like thunder in a silent church. Every eye turned on me, the maid, the help, the woman none of them thought twice about. But let me tell you how it got to that moment. Because stories like this don't start in courtrooms. They start quietly. In kitchens. In hallways filled with echoes. In the spaces where people like me live in the background. I still remember the first time I walked through the gates of the Ashburn estate. I was 22, barely holding myself together, suitcase in one hand, a second-hand purse slung across my chest, and a heart still grieving my mama who had passed only 2 months earlier. I didn't have anyone left. No cousins I could rely on. No siblings to split the pain. I was alone. And the housekeeping job, came through a friend of a friend who said the Ashburns were looking for someone discreet, polite, hardworking. I didn't ask questions. I packed up what little I had and got on the first bus out of East Florence to Raleigh Hills, where the estate sat behind iron gates like something out of a movie. I remember being scared to breathe too loudly when I arrived. The house was enormous, tall white columns, ivy climbing along the stone, big windows that looked like they could see straight through your soul. Mr. Frederick Ashburn greeted me personally, which I didn't expect. He was tall, with silver hair always perfectly combed back, and the kind of calm voice that didn't need volume to demand attention. He shook my hand, looked me in the eye. That alone surprised me. Most people in houses like that don't look people like me in the eye. His wife, Eleanor, had died the year before, and though I never met her, her presence lingered in every hallway. Her scent, some expensive floral perfume I could never name, drifted down the staircase like a ghost. Her photos were still everywhere, smiling with her children, standing beside Mr. Ashburn at charity events, holding a book in the garden behind the house. That house didn't feel alive. It felt paused, like it was holding its breath. My job was simple. Clean, cook, help with laundry, make sure the house stayed in order. There were 4 kids, Julia, Miles, Elizabeth, and Aaron, each beautiful and polite in their own way, raised with manners and expectations. They barely spoke to me, but I didn't take it personally. You learn to be invisible in houses like that, to enter and exit like a shadow, to speak only when spoken to. And I was good at it. I've been practicing invisibility most of my life. Still, Mr. Ashburn was different. Some nights, after the children had gone to bed and the house fell into that comfortable kind of silence only money can buy, he'd come sit at the kitchen table. I'd be cleaning up dinner or folding towels, and he'd just start talking. Not to me, exactly. Just talking. He told stories about Eleanor. How they met during college. How she once got lost in Venice and ended up at a stranger's wedding. How she loved lilacs and hated red wine but drank it anyway because it made her feel grown. How they used to dance barefoot in the living room when no one was watching. I listened. Quietly. Sometimes I'd nod. Sometimes I'd smile. But mostly, I just let him talk. I think he needed that. Someone who didn't ask for anything, didn't expect anything, didn't judge. Over the years, I stayed. Through summer birthdays and Thanksgiving feasts. Through flu seasons and graduations. I stayed when Julia moved to Chicago. When Miles joined the Marines. When Aaron came out and Elizabeth got married in the garden where Eleanor's roses still bloomed. I stayed when the house got quiet again. When Mr. Ashburn got sick. When his steps slowed and his voice softened. I stayed when the chemo started, and I stayed when it stopped working. I remember the night he called me into the study, the one with the dark mahogany desk and the heavy curtains, and said, "Clarice, I don't have much time left." Just like that. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat beside him and held his hand. "You've been more family to me than most people with my last name," he said. His voice cracked on the word family. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stood in the laundry room and cried into a pile of clean towels. When he passed, I felt like a piece of me got buried, too. I didn't expect to be invited to the will reading. That kind of thing was for blood and bone, not for someone who folded the linens and refilled the sugar bowl. But a letter came in the mail with my name on it. Black ink, gold seal, official. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to his funeral. It wasn't fancy, but it was respectful. I sat in the back of the courtroom like I always did, tucked away behind the Ashburn children, now adults, sharp and tailored coats and expensive shoes, each one a little version of their parents in ambition if not always in grace. The judge read through the beginning quickly. To Julia, the law firm. To Miles, the hunting lodge and all his father's rifles. Elizabeth got the art. Aaron got the investment accounts. No one blinked. No tears. No smiles. Just cold nods, like stockholders waiting for their shares. Then came the pause. A thick, breathless pause. To Miss Clarice Turner, the judge read, clearing his throat, for her unwavering loyalty, quiet strength, and the love she gave me when I had nothing left to give, I leave the Ashburn estate in full. The room tilted. I thought he'd made a mistake. I looked around. Surely there was another Clarice in the room. But every face, every stunned, pale, gaping face was looking at me. I stood, slowly, my legs trembling, my breath catching somewhere deep in my chest. Elizabeth was the first to speak. Her voice sliced through the air like glass. She was the maid. The judge continued, unfazed. In her, I found home when the world moved on without me. She stayed when I could no longer speak. She heard me when I had no words. She carried me when I could no longer walk. She did so with grace, with patience, and with love. In return, I give her the home we both shared, because no one deserves it more. No one said anything after that. Not Julia. Not Miles. Not Aaron. They stood up, one by one, and left. Not a glance in my direction. Not a word. I walked out of that courthouse still unsure if it was real. That night, I drove back to the house in silence, not the kind that's empty, but the kind that's full of everything you don't have words for. The house looked the same from the outside. Proud. Stoic. Grand. But I felt different. For the first time, I didn't park behind the house near the servants' entrance. I pulled up to the front. My hands trembled as I turned the key. The lock clicked open like it always had, but this time, it sounded like something beginning, not ending. Inside, the house smelled like memory. Like lemon oil and old pages. Like Eleanor's perfume and Mr. Ashburn's tea. I walked down the hallway, past the portraits, past the stairs. I moved slowly, like I was walking through a dream that didn't belong to me. But it did. In the kitchen, my favorite room, I stood in the doorway and just breathed. The same table. The same chip in the countertop. The same stool where he used to sit. And I whispered, "Thank you." It was quiet. Just a breath. But it held everything: grief, gratitude, shock, love. He didn't have to leave me anything. He could have passed the house to his children. Or sold it. Or donated it. But he didn't. He gave it to me, the woman who'd scrubbed floors and wrapped birthday presents and wiped tears off cheeks that would never remember my name. He saw me. For the first time in my life, someone powerful, someone respected, someone with a name that meant something looked at me and saw me. Not as background. Not as help. Not as a footnote. He gave me more than a house. He gave me worth. He gave me a place in a world that never thought I deserved one. I walked to the stool, sat down, and let myself feel it. The stillness. The quiet. The story that had changed. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Clarice Turner. I was the owner of the Ashburn estate. And I mattered.